Hello, everyone. This is your intrepid pitsman, Mr. Michael Swaim, and welcome back to Tales from the Pit, a show that I'm going to be sunsetting for a little while to reference another depression. No, that's sundowning. I almost thought I did something clever there, but I didn't. Regardless, this show's going to be going on hiatus or a season gap or whatever you'd like to call it, a sabbatical. I decided I'd like to wrap up in part by revisiting my first subject, my mom, Ellen Swaim, who has been, of course, a model for me and an inspiration when it comes to developing healthy coping skills and a more helpful relationship with my own severe depression issues. Everyone is on their own unique, different journey with different ups and downs, but we both do share pretty textbook treatment-resistant depression, and so it's been helpful for me, certainly, to be the child of someone who understands what is going on for me, and she, in a large part, inspired this podcast because I'd like to try and provide some of that useful, basic mental health hygiene, sort of awareness, normalization, and survival strategy tips that she did for me. And I think I might have inherited even that impulse from her because she's also writing a book about many things, but also her experiences with abuse growing up. So consider this your content warning. We'll be opening the episode with a reading of 2 short passages from that upcoming book, and they do include themes of suicidality, cutting, and abuse. In case you're curious, I usually write my short stories that I open these episodes with after the interview. They're often inspired by the interview I had with the person, and indeed, this interview with my mom did inspire me to write a short story. But that short story is expanding so much of its own accord that it's more of a novella now. And so when I wrap that up, I will probably put that up on the Small Beans Patreon shop as an audiobook or part of a larger collection. But look for that in the future. For now, let's hear my mom's own account of some experiences from her childhood, and then we'll get into a conversation about how we heal from those things. And if you want to hop right to that conversation, it happens around 33 to 35 minutes in. Otherwise, this first longer passage reflects on her experience with a young man named Justin, in the story referred to as Will, and her friend Terry. One of my parents' oldest friends, Sarah, came to see them during some darkly mysterious crisis they were having. The 3 of them sat in the living room talking. My father said that he had seen a live serpent rise up out of the pattern of the rug in his study. It had frightened him. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he thought he might be fighting with an angry god. Sarah told him that she saw a witch standing behind him, but that Grace was sitting between him and the witch, protecting him. Later, after Sarah had gone, I was putting dishes away while both of my parents were in the kitchen. Grace was standing with her back to me, spitting out a stream of bitter hatred. "You think you're so fucking cute," she railed. "But you're not cute. You're a snotty little bitch. You're so self-centered you can only see yourself." I stuck my tongue out at her in view of my father. I thought we both knew that her vicious attacks were wrong, but my father, who had not said anything to me for months, erupted against me. "You can go to hell, Emma." He was practically purple, he was so mad. "Grace protects me," he said as I stood there frozen. "She protects me. You will do nothing to hurt her." That was the day I learned that I had no father. And Grace just kept on screaming. She screamed at my cat so viciously that he ran to the front door, frantic, wanting to get out. I stood at the door with him, whispering to him that it was all right, not wanting to let him out because I was afraid he would not come back. But Grace came up behind us and leaned down at my cat, screaming even louder, so I did open the door, and he shot outside right under the wheels of a car. And Grace screamed, "I bet you think that was my fault." My feelings were muddled too painful to bear. I watched ice hockey for hours, the whoosh of the skates over the ice the only thing that came close to soothing me. I got another cat some time later, but I was afraid to love her. Time stretched out bleak and gray. I didn't look forward to much of anything anymore. In my junior year of high school, I had a horrifying nightmare in which I was transfixed at the top of the basement stairs. Jack was transfixed halfway down, and my father was at the bottom of the stairs, staring into another room. I knew suddenly that Jack had gone into that room and was lying dead in there, his body decomposing. I woke up terrified and certain that Jack was dead. When I told Grace about the nightmare and she told my father, he called a meeting with me to explain the dream. "You've had a psychic dream," he told me after a long silence. "Your dream depicts your knowledge of our hierarchical vulnerability to evil. Based on where we were on the stairs, Jack is the most vulnerable," he said, as he was dead in the room at the bottom of the stairs. My father himself was the next most vulnerable, being at the bottom of the staircase. With Leo halfway up and me at the top of the stairs, we were less vulnerable to the evil forces. Grace and Sister Iris were not even in the house in my dream. Jack told me later that our parents were happy about that nightmare I had. They thought I had chosen sides with them against the evil that could kill and decompose Jack in the time it took for me to get downstairs. By this time, I was afraid of everything, and it had become part of my being, inseparable from conscious thought, part of my skin and eyes and flesh and bones, that I must never upset my father, or evil would win, and the universe would simply fly apart, revealing whatever ugliness she had to reveal. My new cat got pregnant roaming around, but the tension in our house squeezed her so tight that she had only one kitten. She didn't produce milk, though she stayed with her kitten in the storage cupboard in the basement where she'd given birth. I fed the tiny kitten with an eyedropper every few hours, and it was growing. One day, when the kitten was 3 weeks old, Grace told me not to come home from school at lunchtime, as I had been doing, to feed him. She said my father was having a hard time that day and didn't want anyone in the house. Not upsetting my father was even more critical than not inspiring Grace's anger. "He'll know you're here no matter how quiet you are," Grace told me, "so don't come home." When I got home after school, the kitten was dead. I cried hysterically in my room as quietly as I could. I barely knew that kitten, I told myself. I berated myself for crying. I believed the kitten had died of thirst because I wasn't there to feed him. But in a burst of anger a few days later, Grace screamed, "For God's sake, what did you think we were going to do with that kitten? We were never going to keep him." And many years later, when I was visiting Iris, she showed me a letter Grace had written to her about that kitten. "I don't know what she thinks we're going to do with it," Grace had written. "I guess I'll let it get a little older and then we'll kill it." Still to this day, it's hard for me to believe that Grace put that cruelty in writing. My shyness and fear of boys lasted through high school and into the years beyond. I had crushes on boys from afar, but I never wanted them to know. I stayed separate from the boys who came close in order to protect the connection. I became friends with some boys who had long hair and wore army jackets with peace signs patched on, who accepted that their friendships with girls meant they would never make a pass at them. We hugged affectionately in the hallways and sat together on the grass outside school, and I was comfortable with their shared code that our friendship was not to be violated. I continued to wear muted colors and plain, loose clothes. I added a big green army jacket. I visited Iris in Boston on a rare trip away from home in my junior year, a trip to look at colleges. Iris had a gathering of friends at her house while I was there, and Will came to her party with a group of others. Will was 16, my age. His face was open and friendly, and he talked and laughed with a lot of the people at the party. I was sitting on the floor against a wall, enjoying the warm hum of voices and watching Iris's friends talk and eat and move in and out of the room. I enjoyed the warm buzz of someone else's people, and I enjoyed being left on my own just to watch them, just to be there. I was painfully shy and clueless socially. I had never been on a date, never been kissed. I was a wallflower sitting there, leaning against the living room wall. Iris told me later that Will had said, "Your sister's so shy. She's sitting over there by herself and nobody's gone to talk to her." So he sat down on the floor next to me and started talking. He carried the conversation on his own for quite some time. I kept thinking he was being polite and that he'd leave shortly, but he kept on talking, an uninterrupted stream of anecdotes, teasing and joking until I laughed with him, and until I finally started talking too. Will and I talked for 8 straight hours after that, sitting on Iris's living room floor. She said goodbye to her guests in the background one by one without Will or I noticing. She washed the dishes and put everything away, all the while wondering when Will would go, and all the while Will and I just talking, unaware of anything else around us. Iris finally went to bed, and Will and I talked until 2 o'clock, when he drifted off to sleep on the floor next to me. I watched him sleep in the warm glow of a nearby lamp. The lamp lit Will's face with a golden light. My world suddenly turned from gray to a warm golden glow. Will woke up while I was watching him, sleepy and smiling. He asked for my hand to help him up. For a second, I was afraid to touch his hand, thinking it would be scary and cold, but his hand was warm, and it felt good in my hand. It was the first time Will and I had touched. Will grabbed some paper from the entry table and wrote down his address and phone number, and he asked for mine. I walked him outside to the front porch to say goodbye. I thought he was beautiful. He stood there smiling, shifting from foot to foot. The world was warm and golden, and Will softly said, "I really want to kiss you." By then, I was so comfortable that I had no trouble telling him the truth. "I'm afraid to be kissed," I said. I hadn't been afraid to tell him that at all. I didn't even feel the need to try and explain. Will said, "I'll give you cousin kisses." He put his arms around me now, smiling down at me. I looked up at his face just above mine, felt him holding me all warm and close and easy, snuggled together inside his big jacket, and I asked him, "What are cousin kisses?" He kissed me then, 3 times, softly on the lips. It was warm and gentle and a little bit longer than cousin kisses might normally be, and it wasn't scary at all. I smiled, and Will smiled too, and whispered goodbye. He turned at the sidewalk and shouted, "I'll call you and I'll write you," and then he was gone. I flew home the following night. My sister had joked with me in the morning about how long Will had stayed. When she'd seen him at work that day, he'd said, "Tell your sister I have her address pinned to my bedroom wall." I felt warm, hopeful, not empty at all. I felt full of warmth, full of hope, full of love. I put Will's address and phone number on my desk at home. It was Halloween and I had the creeps. I was afraid to touch that piece of paper of Will's, afraid it would be cold. I had a dream that night that there were 4 people dressed in white, lying under white sheets in a hospital, and that one of them was Will. All 4 of them were badly hurt, but Will was the only one who was going to die. The next day, Iris called to tell me the bad news. Will was on life support. He'd been in a car accident with 3 of his friends on Halloween night, and the 4 of them were all badly hurt and in the hospital. The rest of them were going to be okay, Iris said, but Will wasn't going to wake up from life support. Iris had gone to see him and said he didn't look like himself. His family, who were devastated, were going to let him go the following day. Will looked peaceful, my sister told me, like he didn't get upset when it happened. He looked like himself, but not himself, she said. They let him go the next day. I could not grasp how Will could have been there with me, alive and so full of warmth and humor and love, and then be gone in a way so final that I never had hope of seeing him again. I cried inconsolably. Will had left his jacket at my sister's workplace, and she mailed the jacket to me. It was green like my army jacket, but it was a winter parka, big and fluffy and soft. I cuddled with it and tried to sleep. My parents were upset with Iris for introducing Will to me. Although he had been a passenger in the car, they insisted he'd committed suicide. They said he'd gotten himself killed to get to me, because the evil spirits were trying to get to me, to get to my father. Will had been weak enough to let the evil in, they said. Iris should have seen that and not introduced him to me. My father didn't come and talk to me himself. As always, Grace passed on these messages to me. Her words stopped in the air somewhere before they reached me. I could not absorb them. Grace said that my father wanted to talk to me directly himself when he was able. The next night, Grace sent Jack and Leo away, and my father came to sit with me on the narrow stairway that led to our bedrooms. I had a brief flicker of hope. I thought he might have something comforting to tell me, something that would control the agony of Will's death. But he had nothing to say about the sweet, friendly, light-hearted boy who had noticed me, who had talked to me until I wasn't shy anymore, who had turned the world from gray to gold, who had kissed me. The boy who had tacked my address up onto his bedroom wall. "You shouldn't have to hear this when you're only 16, my father began. I felt a stab of fear. He talked about death and animal sacrifices and evil spirits. He said that death was a place of infinite time, with a consciousness that had no body or speech to connect or express anything, a suffering being that was infinitely alone, trapped in a small gray cell of energy and tortured by it. This is what was happening to Will, my father said, and he is now trying to get your body. He said that Will would take over my body so that the evil would have access to my father and stop his work, which was the only thing saving the world. My father's world of evil spirits had seemed separate from me in my lonely space in that house, but now my father's unfathomable world crashed into mine. I was still separated from him in a way that made me feel farther from anyone than I had ever felt in my life, but he was speaking to me from the world he lived in, and I was in that awful place now too. I lay on my bed at night and listened to see if what he'd said was true. Was Will trying to get into my body? But Will never came. He was with his family and friends he'd known far longer than he'd known me. He never came to be with me, even though I wanted him to come. I continued to sleep with Will's jacket, soft and warm. There were murmurs in the house for a while. My father had thought his talk with me would be enough to get rid of the jacket, though he hadn't mentioned it. Jack knocked on my door one night, deadly serious, and told me to get rid of Will's jacket. "You're inviting evil forces in," he said. "You're betraying the family." I must have looked befuddled. "You're hurting Dad," Jack said. "You're hurting his work." Our father's work spread over all of us like the sky. I neither felt nor heard nor saw any evil in that jacket. All that was in that jacket was some minor comfort for me. I don't know how I knew it when my big brother didn't, but I knew my father was wrong. I refused to get rid of Will's jacket. I don't know what they said to each other when I wasn't around, but Jack came after me hard about that jacket. I sensed for the first time that he and I stood on opposite sides of a chasm. And even more surprisingly, shortly after, I found that Leo also stood on the other side. "Dad's not God," I said one day in frustration. Jack was furious at me for saying Dad's not God the way I did. He reported from Dad through Grace to him to me that I had accused Dad of making a graven image. "And you're the one who's making a graven image when you say he thinks he's God," Jack said. I didn't know what a graven image was, but I was tired of fighting. I was tired of scaring Jack. I sent Will's jacket back to my sister. I didn't get over Will for a very long time. I was ashamed for having so much pain over him when I'd only known him for that one brief evening. I began cutting long strips in my arms. I wanted to feel something, but the razor blade didn't hurt. The sight of my blood was a relief in some way. I showed Grace my bloody arms only once and pleaded with her to take me to a psychiatrist. She turned on me, angry. "Stop dramatizing yourself at my expense," she shouted. And then she said, with a cold, calm quiet, "And get the fuck out of my room." I showed Jack my bloody arm then and told him that I needed help. He told Grace, which angered her even more. "How dare you show something like that to a kid his age?" I never showed anyone again. I cut long strips in my arms for many years after that because it felt good. It somehow put the pain from inside on the outside where I could see it. It was the best expression I could muster of my anger, too. I wore long sleeves, and nobody ever knew. 6 months later, I threw away Will's address because it hurt too much to see it there on my desk, hoping that it might hold an answer about anything. When I told Grace I had finally thrown Will's address away, she said I'd lied to everyone about having it at all. Nobody had known I had it. "You put him ahead of Dad," she said. "You lie down with evil." I was clear in my own mind that this could not be true, but the space between me and them was a roiling mess. I was so sad. I wrote poems about death and began to talk about death at school. I wanted death. The other kids looked at me oddly, even my friends. My friends who sat near me were embarrassed by how hard I cried in class, just sitting there with everyone pretending not to notice. I had nightmare after nightmare. I dreamed that every member of my family died one by one, everyone except Grace. I dreamed that I had died and was lying in a casket, waiting. I dreamed that I almost got back to my house in New Jersey. I dreamed that many times, each dream different. I dreamed that I got all the way to the front yard of my big old house, but the devil was guarding the yard in the form of a baby lying in a casket. Or I dreamed I got all the way to the front yard again, but the house was under construction and the workers would not let me by. I dreamed I finally got inside the house, but it was totally different inside. But I made a new friend, Terry. Terry was a pretty, popular, outgoing girl who was starring in one of the school plays. Terry was the one who listened to me. She was a sophomore when I met her, a year younger than I was. I met her in speech class. Speech class was required, but I was afraid to take it, so I had put it off until junior year. On the first day of class, I chose the seat furthest back, and Terry plunked down in the seat in front of mine, turning around to talk to me. Every day when we got to class, Terry threw her stuff under her desk and turned toward me with a huge smile and started talking. She was animated, pretty, with big green eyes. Terry was in drama club, she told me, and was appearing in the next play. "Don't be afraid of speech class," she told me. "It's really fun once you get started, and nobody listens to anyone anyway." I must have looked at her funny. "Do you ever listen to their speeches?" she laughed. She had somehow managed to make me less afraid. Every day, Terry and I came to speech class early so we could talk, leaning into each other, rushing to get everything said before class started. I told Terry I was sad because of Will, and she accepted that sadness. She had some deep feelings of her own that she did not share. Terry paid a hard price for those feelings. Somebody told me later that Terry had lived alone with a violent father. Terry was fascinated that I wanted to kill myself. She wrote me a long, calm letter one day. She was Catholic. "I don't want you to kill yourself," her letter said, "but if you do decide to, remember that suicide is a sin, so don't do it directly. Jump in front of a train or a truck. Then you didn't kill yourself. You got killed by the train or truck. That way, you will still go to heaven." The last thing she said in the letter was how much she liked and admired me, and that she didn't want me to die. "I model myself after you," she wrote. I put Terry's letter on my desk at home, right where Will's address had been. I had a cold feeling of dread about that letter. I had not actually made a plan to kill myself. I just didn't want to still be living, which is what I'd shared with her. Terry left her father's house a few days later and stepped in front of a train. Our town was a picturesque suburb where everyone pretended nothing bad ever happened. So it was as though Terry hadn't happened. Our speech teacher announced Terry's death in class, and everyone filed out of the room, expressionless. I ran down the halls of the school sobbing. Everyone politely ignored me. I walked home hysterical and came through the front door crying, and Grace asked me why I was crying. I sobbed, "Terry died," but Grace didn't know who Terry was. I went upstairs and lay on the floor of my room sobbing. Nobody came upstairs. My brothers had friends over, and I could hear Grace, Leo, and Leo's friends talking and laughing in the kitchen below my floor. After a long while, Leo came up to my room with a sandwich. He stared at me on the floor crying and set the plate down silently, then went downstairs to join back in with the group. At school the next day, someone said you could visit Terry in the hospital, and my heart leapt with joyous hope. But then they laughed and added, "In rooms A through Z." I decided I must be oversensitive. I had only been friends with Terry for a little while. Though I couldn't control the depth of my grief or its expression, I somehow believed I was faking it. Everyone thought Terry's death had been an accident. I seemed to be the only one who knew she had done it on purpose, and I really needed to talk to someone about it. I asked Grace if I could tell the police what I knew. Grace was angry that I might bring police to the house and upset my father, but she let me call the sheriff's office anyway. Then she took Jack and Leo grocery shopping, warning me, "Get him out of here before your father comes upstairs. You better not upset your father." Alone with a deputy in our kitchen, I handed him Terry's letter. Tears streamed down my face. The officer politely ignored my agony. He took down a few notes while standing there, then took Terry's letter from me and went away. I was relieved he'd left before my father came upstairs. I was disappointed I still had no one to talk to. I went to Terry's memorial with a friend, and I heard her grandmother talking about Terry's accident. I didn't say anything. Her grandmother was already too upset. She just kept saying, "Why did she go out without her glasses? Why?" Grace came into my room one day a few months later and saw me looking at Terry's photo in the yearbook. I expected her to make a harsh comment about my room or my choice of friends, but she only said gently and sadly, "She was pretty." I froze completely after that. I froze Terry's words, "I model myself after you." I froze Terry, and Will, and Charcoal, my first cat, and Marky, and my brothers, and everyone else. All of the sidewalks and flowers and bike rides and lakes and oceans. I froze everything. And for years after that, I would get that same cold feeling of dread that I had felt with Terry's letter. I thought the cold feeling meant I had somehow psychically predicted her death. Every time I got that feeling, for many years after that, I thought that meant someone I loved was about to die. My sense of living in two worlds, one real and one not, increased. I thought my family's world must certainly be real. I had grown up with them, and that felt real. When I was at home, I felt separate from all of them, but at least they were real. When I was away from the house and the family I'd known all my life, nothing felt real. And this is a much shorter passage about Dr. French, and after this, we'll get into the conversation. I was 33 years old before I was offered the medication that brought me back to myself. I met my favorite therapist of my entire life while pursuing my bachelor's degree in child development. He was a professor, a psychologist, and a Catholic priest. I was an older student at the college, and we connected immediately. I took all 3 of his classes. He had told the class that he could not act as psychologist for his students because it presented a conflict for him. I asked him for a referral to counseling because he had inspired me to try. He said he would be my therapist. I absolutely loved this man. We became very close, but I never stopped calling him Dr. French. It put the proper safety between us. I told him the entire story of my childhood. He heard and understood. It was extremely beneficial to me. I fell in love with him, knowing that this was safe with him, a priest and my therapist. I saw him every week. I never told him. I don't think he ever knew that I had fallen in love, though he knew how much I loved him. I could tell that he loved me too. After 2 years of weekly counseling, Dr. French told me, "I could talk to you until you're 80, Emma, but you will still be depressed. You need to be on medication for your depression. It's biological. It's like a diabetic who needs insulin. They just take the insulin." The idea of talking to Dr. French until I was 80 pleased me greatly. I refused the medication, though, telling him that what I needed most was to be myself. It was already hard enough to stay in touch with my feelings. But when Connor and I filed for divorce, my depression became an emergency. I was losing my second family. I was taking our 2 young sons from their childhood home. I called Marky, whom I hadn't talked to in years. "I've known you for 30 years, Marky said. I've never hurt you like this." I begged for medication the next time I saw Dr. French, telling him that if I didn't get it quickly, I would go to a pharmacy and take everything I thought might help off the shelves. Dr. French got on the phone while I was in his office and referred me to a psychiatrist. He turned his back to me toward the end of the call. "I think it's an emergency," I heard him whisper. The doctor got me in to see her immediately. When the Prozac she prescribed took effect, which happened more quickly than we expected, I became myself again. The dull film between me and the world was gone. The stone inside me, the glass wall around me, simply disappeared, and I had already done so much of the work in counseling. I wrote the following on a scrap of paper. All that matters is how you treat your children. Dr. French was 55 years old when he had his first heart attack. He almost died. I found out then that he was diabetic. I couldn't understand why he always drank big gulps in class. There was always one on his desk. I found out then that his receptionist was his younger sister. She told me the hospital he was in, that he was in the critical care unit there, but that he was awake. I took a single red rose to the hospital with a card, and I gave it to a nurse to give to him. I called the office every few days to see how he was. When he got out of the hospital, his sister made me an appointment to come see him. He isn't seeing patients yet, Emma, but he wants to see you, she told me. When I got to his office, she buzzed him that I was there, and he came out into the waiting room and gave me the longest, hardest hug I have ever felt. I still feel it. I feel it more than 30 years later, right now, and it still makes me feel warm inside. Thank you for the rose, he said. It made me feel loved. And we went back to our counseling sessions and dug even deeper than before. We talked about Will and Terry. We talked about the rape. We talked about my brothers turning against me. We talked about all of my boyfriends rejecting me. 6 months later, Dr. French had another heart attack, and this time he died. I was devastated. I wrote the following poem. The poison had lived undisturbed for years, in a small, hard pool, unyielding but leashed. Now it is wild, and I have to call on friends to help me wash it with a stronger peace. Now it gets worse, and I wake, and I have no friends, no shell left either, no inside, nothing to hold, no voice, no body, I don't exist at all. You told me to let go, and now I fall. I drove back to Ouray, Colorado with my sons, and we soaked ourselves in the hot springs pool. It took weeks before I could eat normally again. But it was grief, and that was different from depression. So can you ballpark when you think your book will be hitting shelves?
Oh, I don't know if
And is it still called The Invisible Lawyer?
It's called A Road Trip Through Time and Light, The Invisible Lawyer.
Oh, you can't pick. This is what authors
No.
see.
It's a double header, man. A Road Trip Through Time and Light, The Invisible Lawyer.
That's very algo friendly. That's SEO. You have good instincts
Algo?
for the modern world.
What's
yeah,
SEO?
The algorithm.
No idea what SEO
is SEO? Good. See, that gives you even
Search
more credit.
engine
That's great for
optimization.
SEO. You can take that authenticity dollar home. What led you, because I could answer this for days and days, but in a nutshell, why sit down and start writing this book as a whole? And then why did you pick these sections to give me when I said I wanted to interview you about the book?
Well, to answer your second question first.
Please do.
You asked me to come up with a topic, I think, and it was a topic that I think it was death of a friend, death of loved ones. And so the deaths that affected me the most were the ones that hit me really early on in my teenage years and introduced me to, the fact that a human being you knew could suddenly be gone. And so that's the topic I came up with. It wasn't necessarily the whole book.
So, yeah, I feel like I've had only a handful of experiences like that. Shout out Danzy, Hans, Glenn now.
Uncle John.
But for a 40-year-old, that's not that. And I wonder if you even have perspective on this, because we all have the myopathy of our own lived experience. But do you see what I see, which is when I read these, I feel like you have a high score of Not just deaths, but like the reason I stopped watching Game of Thrones, like as if God especially wanted to rub your face in. Life can be cruel. Watch. Do you feel that way now that you're older and have many other lives to sort of compare notes with?
I thought things were a bit odd, yes. I called it bad luck. I felt like I had bad luck for a really long time, and I felt like I had really bad luck, and then I felt like around 35 years old or so, the bad luck stopped, and I felt like all my bad luck that was supposed to be spread over a lifetime just came in the beginning, and now I get to have no bad luck.
That's how you get fibromyalgia, my dude.
Yeah, I know.
It's all the bad luck in one bite, then you're all ratcheted up. But that's so interesting because, and as you point out in one of the passages, it's the difference between grief and depression. Let me zoom in on that just when, at the end of that passage about Dr. French, when he dies at the end, you talk about a full feeling of despair, and the poem you wrote in response is pretty despair forward or pain forward.
Oh.
But did it feel, obviously I feel like from the writing perspective, the point of that arc is that it felt different than the depression sadness, right? Grief sadness feels different than depression sadness. Did I get the right lesson from that passage?
I was pretty slammed by his death. I was pretty brokenhearted. Yeah, I don't think it was depression. Also with Justin and Terry, it wasn't depression.
Can you differentiate those kinds of pain?
I can differentiate them, but you are currently reminding me of something that I had sort of forgotten, which is that Dr. French is the one that told me that I needed antidepressants. And I was not on antidepressants when he died, or I had just begun them. So
according to the story, you had just begun them.
yeah, he called a psychiatrist friend that he knew named Dr.
Yeah.
Bruns.
Who was later mine.
Yes, and said
I didn't know that.
He sort of turned his back to me in the room and said, I think it's an emergency, and sent me to him to get antidepressants. The thing is, I had been depressed from age 12 until I started taking Prozac, maybe, 6 weeks into the Prozac. And I had never not been depressed. I had not felt alive. I had not felt like myself. I had felt separated, distant, covered by a glass wall between me and everything else until I took the meds. So within that I had terrible bouts of searing pain when people died.
Well, we're on it. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up. And you feel free to tell me if it's like, if the story is paraphrasing or apocryphal or anything. But in the story, I believe he says it's an emergency because you said if you don't get on mood meds, you're going to go to the pharmacy and just take a
lot of Benadryl. Yeah.
And so you know how that reads to modern, or like my mind, right? Is like, well, that's not how you're supposed to get on Prozac, is a suicidality. Obviously,
it wasn't suicidality.
Speak to that.
It was
you
not.
Didn't take that as a suicide.
It wasn't suicidality. I was just
Okay.
going to use anything I could to try to relieve. No, I had known him. I had been in therapy with him for 2 years by then, and he knew me very, very well. And he had been trying to tell me. I did not believe him, and the depression felt like I was so not myself and so apart from myself. I thought a medication would make that worse and make me less myself. So that's why I resisted it, because I wanted to get home. I wanted to get back to myself. I wanted to be who I was when I was 11, when I could enjoy things, when I could go outside and play, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I felt alive, and I felt like my real self.
Okay, so so many questions, but in quick order. You're not saying that then you found the right pills and you were happy and new like a child and all that trauma was resolved and fine, correct?
I am saying that once I got put on the Prozac and the depression lifted, I had all of the problems and I had all of the things to untangle, including the experience of having been depressed for so long and everything that generates in your life. But I was not depressed anymore, so therefore I had the capability of finding joy and feeling alive and feeling close to who I was before.
So then, in that same question cluster, do you feel, because people will have just heard the passage, so there's a little context that like mental illness definitely runs in our family, but I wonder, or do you know, or is it impossible to know, right? I always wonder how much the car accident impacts my neurodivergency and mood issues. Do you think if your life had not been, let's call it like a cavalcade of bad luck in the first third, you would have different, like, how much is trauma and how much was that grandpa schizophrenic? Do you have any clarity on that?
I'm not so
person who's older than me. Do you have any extra wisdom?
I'm not positive that he's schizophrenic.
Okay.
I am positive.
So I shouldn't go out on a limb, but do you think you were going to be struggle with depression no matter what, or is it a trauma response?
I think that my mother's screaming constantly at us and the torrent of abuse we took from very early on, since before I could remember until I got out of there, caused the depression that began when I was 12.
So that's why I'm surprised. How'd you hold out till you were 12 if it was already happening? If it was your normal?
I do not think that you would have been depressed as a child, but for the traumatic brain injury that you suffered. I think that we have a penchant towards biochemical depression in our family. And if it's like if you're exposed to germs and you have a low immune system, you'll get sick. If your immune system's in good, healthy order, you won't. I think it's like that. I think that in our family, we all could have gotten depressed, and I think that every one of my siblings has become depressed. However, none of them are on meds except me, and they can.
Some of our cousins.
They can come out of it. That's a whole different story.
It is. We're not. Yeah, and let's not get too diverted.
That's from another side of another family.
Oh, okay. If you say that Grandpa was potentially not schizophrenic, is that just caution, not wanting to diagnose from the armchair, or
I'm telling
he was mentally ill.
I'm telling you what Dr. French told me, which is that it's possible he was bipolar, and when he went into a very, very deep side of the depression, that he had psychotic breaks, because you can have psychotic breaks from being that deeply depressed. So
do you, looking back, think of him as depressive as well? Like, on top of saying and believing things that aren't true, did he strike you as a depressed guy most of the time? He
was very quiet, very withdrawn. Not most of the time, not when I was younger, when he was in his 20s. Yeah. But, he basically withdrew and hid from the rest of us.
Interesting that, and I think helpful for maybe listeners, takeaway that I always want to highlight when it comes up is that one of the most dangerous things of depression is the quicksand effect you mentioned. When you're depressed, you feel like almost like you're clear-eyed, or, oh, I see that I'm a piece of shit and that's true. What's the point of meds? If they'll make me see anything other than that, that's a delusion. And it's like, no, that's a delusion. Actually, I think the truth is all of existence is illusion, certainly your perceptions. So you may as well not be depressed as be depressed if there's a pill that can do that for you. But I agree that when I'm depressed, one of the first things to go is my perception that I deserve better.
Antidepressant will not make you happy. It's not a happy pill.
No, but it makes you feel like you're in the game, or you have capabilities.
It gives you the capability,
right,
to not be clinically depressed. And you and I have talked about this before on the first podcast. It's extremely different. It's a whole different animal. So to answer your question, Michael, your struggle with the depression is very different from anybody else in our family. It comes from your head injury. Yes, we have a propensity towards it, And yes, if I hadn't been traumatized, I would have it lighter, and I would be able to sort
Probably.
of kick it out more easily. I mean, as it is now, if I get depressed, I go into such a deep, dark depression that I have to take the medication or I can't come out of it. None of my siblings are like that. And you're not like that. The brain injury caused things in you that I haven't seen in anybody else in our family. As far as having to sleep 16 hours a day, your body not being able to regulate its own temperature, the severity of how deep the depression is, the suicidality. I had
The recent one that I remember comically now, because it's been long enough, is Thanksgiving Day, just sitting staring into space, tears gently falling down my face all day.
at
Thanksgiving
David
Day.
Caden Owens' house.
Everyone was like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just
dude.
can't stop crying. I don't know.
Dude, you
Happy
went
Thanksgiving, I guess."
Listen, you went down the wrong road. You were taking a cocktail of meds that were very bad for you and not good for you. And that was the worst I've ever seen you.
Ketamine. Elon loves it.
And
so let me ask.
don't even get me started
No,
on-
please don't get anyone your age started about it, because that's all they'll talk about.
No, not the ketamine. You're a
hot-
psychiatrist.
No,
Don't get me
I meant Elon Musk.
Don't
No,
get me
Don't get started on Trump and Musk.
started.
I would like to ask, before we move on from Dr. French passage a bit,
We haven't even
just
started.
hey, this is a gotcha podcast. I bet you didn't
we
know
haven't
it's a gotcha
started
interview.
on Dr. French yet.
Do you see through modern eyes that it feels a little hinky, as Colbert might say, about that you say in the passage, I fell in love with him, and he knew I was in love with him, and like I sent him a single rose and stuff, and that was okay because it stayed professional.
No, he
you know
didn't.
that's not good, right? Or that's a breach of.
Okay,
or
wait,
My understanding is that's not good for for you to be. That's transference, we calls it.
It was transference. He did not know that
Oh, you said he did not know. That's right.
No, he certainly did
Even
not
when you
know.
send him a rose in a poem.
No, he was really an innocent person. He was a Catholic priest.
Yeah. Oh, and they're famously innocent. They're all innocent.
He did not have romantic relationships. He fostered 19 different teenage children. He ran his own. He was a clinical psychologist and he was a professor at San Diego State University. I met him through his classes. He made an exception for me to be a patient. And he worked with me for 2 years. And at the end of the 2 years, after we ended therapy, I told him that I loved him. And he was very upset by it. He felt really guilty because we were honestly really, really close. We became close in the classes at San Diego State. I think because I was an older student and I understood what he was saying. They were psychology classes. Mm-hmm. And we had an intellectual connection. And then we did the therapy for 2 years, and he was very, very helpful to me in identifying some of the things that had happened and whether they were normal or out of the ordinary.
So sorry to interrupt, but it will keep us structurally in a good place and on track. Let's zoom in there a little bit and let me ask, because in the story and earlier you mentioned I'm incapable, the meds give me the capability to even begin tackling it, yet now you're saying something about the therapy was already helping. Beyond, right? Like you appreciate Dr. French beyond just being the gateway that eventually got you Prozac. So can you speak a little bit to how therapy helps and how pills help and how those are two different but overlapping things?
They are two different but overlapping things.
Great.
He helped me identify. At one point he said to me, I told him what happened with my throat, with my abscessed tonsil and how I was treated through it and how I didn't go to the doctor and I got sicker and sicker and was told to stop whining. He said to me, if that happened in this decade, you would have been removed from the family. So he said things like that to me about some of the stories. That was what I needed to hear most, was this was not normal. This was severe. There's a reason it affected you severely. So I never got any feedback on any of it. When you
So would it be fair to say, because I think it's true, that people who are allies of or loved ones of people struggling with depression who just don't get it and feel like they say validating things and it never sinks in, it does sometimes sink in even when it doesn't seem like it did. So don't give up on being there for that person. They might not have the capacity to show it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. There are things, it's two completely different things. The depression that, for me, Prozac treats is a darkness that has no words to it. The terrible upbringing and unwinding all of the bad things you learned and learning all of the things you never got to learn, that's a whole different thing. That's analytical, that has words associated with it, ideas. You have to figure it all out. And you have to do both if you have both problems.
When your parents were telling you things like the evil, being raised on, oh, Mark died, he must want to get into your body now as an evil spirit, and that's what we have to worry about now. Did your horse sense always tell you that's not true, that seems wrong? Or what did it take for you to realize that's just not true? Like, my parents believe things that are not reality.
It took the developmental years of being a teenager. It's interesting you asked that because I have thought about this before. I was 16 years old and my brain was developing to the point where, well, first of all, I simply knew it couldn't possibly be true. But when I was younger, I believed everything they said and did was perfectly normal. So that's what got me thrown out of the house, was knowing that it wasn't true.
But when they said you are a demon, you could introspect and know, no, I'm not, or I'm trying hard, I'm good, or I'm not, right?
That's
separate.
That's a whole different question. That happened a little later when I got thrown out. I fought, I turned into a lawyer for a reason.
Right.
I fought, I argued, I said, no, this isn't true. However, I wasn't quite sure that I wasn't possessed by an evil spirits, because if I were, I wouldn't know it because they would trick me. So how could I know for sure?
Okay.
And there were analytical things that happened where the light, I was like, aha, I know now for sure what I believed all along was that you guys are badly mistaken and I am not.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you one of those stories if you want, or not. But yeah, when I was 16, I just reacted. I felt like I was the only sane person in the whole family. And I said what I believed and made a lot of trouble for me. And then later, I will tell you the story. So when I was about 22 years old, I came home for the first time. And they said to me, we can tell that the evil spirits are gone from you. You're not possessed by evil spirits anymore. We're so glad you're Ellen again. But I knew...
Emma. Oh, don't leave that in.
I knew I had been Ellen. Everybody knows who I am. Everybody knows.
It's a joke, I know.
I knew that I knew who I had been the whole time. I had never had a break in a sense of identity. So when they saw that I wasn't possessed by demons now, I knew that they had seen demons in me that weren't there because I was always the same person. So it's sort of like, that's an analytical, logical piece of evidence that I used to go, oh, phew, I haven't been mistaken all this time.
Well, then what about, because I get this under much less inclement circumstances, and it is a really tough one, shade of despair, which is, did you ever, often, sometimes, never feel like, oh, there is a God and God is my enemy, or like I am especially cursed, like the pity party feeling.
No,
You know what I mean?
I have never had that feeling.
That's crazy because I dwell in
And
that. Maybe that's because I have an easier life.
Your feeling is a symptom of depression.
But you've been depressed a lot of your life, and you're saying you never felt like,
God,
why does all this shit happen to me? You didn't ever feel that way?
I felt like I was worthless. I felt like, I felt all of the things that are on the list of symptoms of depression.
Yeah.
Feeling that God is out to get you. You're depressed, man.
But you didn't ever feel that way. That's
I
interesting.
thought I had really, really terrible luck and that bad things would keep happening.
I think that's similar.
I needed to keep my head down.
Well, this is interesting because to this day, I think that's important to note, you didn't wipe that out and replace it with like hardcore materialism, atheism. You do have a spiritual side and believe in a metaphysical dimension. Like I know you believe that the spirits of our ancestors are with us in some way, right? So I guess,
I didn't.
Does that lend any credibility to the, you know what I mean? Like if Hans can still visit me as a butterfly, does that imply there are evil demons just as plausibly? Because my consolation is I don't believe there's either. I think everything's just a machine.
I did not believe in God when I was growing up. I was not taught to believe in God. I was quite offended when I found out later that my father believed in God and somehow it imparted that sense of comfort to my brothers, but not me. I have a sense of universal love in the universe and ever present life and dimensions beyond the physical body. Yes, I do, and I don't believe I had that necessarily before. So
before what? Before finding the right
I grew up and went on my own exploration. I think I found that out through road trips. And that's why I titled my book A Road Trip Through Time and Light, because I drove across country probably 30 or 40 times.
Wow.
And I mean like thousands and thousands of miles by myself. And, you drive through the desert and you're looking at these rocks and at the sky and you're seeing faces in the rocks that like the wind blew the face there. You just feel it. You feel the metaphysical. And it just comes to you. I wasn't given it. It's a gift that most people get through their upbringing in their church. I wasn't given that gift. So
spirituality at all of any sort?
It's a gift.
Yeah.
So I came to it on my own, and that's...
I have the quantum physics version. To me,
basically it is quantum...
spirituality, yeah.
It basically is quantum physics, yes. I don't understand quantum physics, but when I
But from what Glenn explained to us, it seems...
When I understand anything about it at all, I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Well, so speaking of the metaphysical dimension in different places, obviously Dr. French had it, being a Catholic priest. Was that part of that to you? Like, did he awaken any sort of religious feeling in you or just resonate with what you already felt? Or did that not enter into it and he was just a good therapist that you sent or rose?
Oh no, he kept those things completely separate. There was no religion brought up. There was no spirituality brought up. He didn't talk about people as being in the afterlife. No, he was a really, really very, very bright person, very driven, and a really good psychologist. And somehow we just had a really strong intellectual connection. But no, he didn't bring any kind of metaphysical spirituality, religion into any of the therapy sessions or into our friendship. When I told him after the therapy ended that I loved him, he was really upset, apologized profusely, and said that we should be friends.
I think that's the right protocol,
he wanted to maintain a relationship with me and not shut me out. But he didn't have a concept of romance because he was a Catholic priest, and he didn't go there, so he didn't expect anybody else to. So when I brought him the rose at the hospital because I knew he had almost died and might die any minute. And it wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a gesture of pure love. I love you. Please don't die. I'm so glad you didn't die. And when his sister, who was his receptionist, called me and said, he's ready to see you back for a session. And I went in and it was empty there. And I was, he had specifically made himself available to only a few people because he was still, like, he had a heart attack or a stroke. I don't remember. I think it was a heart attack because he was diabetic, and it that's what happens.
Did that not give you any kind of like anticipatory dread every time you make a friend, or I guess a curse in that sense? Like, did you feel, because sometimes I'll also in depression mode feel like everything I touch turns to shit, or people do, because I was never presented with the context of evil demons infecting me, but I do sometimes feel, and I think a common depressed person thing is, I am an anchor though, like I'm a burden. People need to get far away from me. Even the people I love would be better off getting away from me. I'll fuck it up and like ruin their lives as well, just because I'm a piece of shit, or because of my bad luck is infectious. But how do you feel you sort of navigated those deaths at the time and then later in life?
Oh boy, I didn't. It was horrible. These repeated episodes of things like people suddenly dying,
where you just get the rug pulled out from under you,
yeah, made me really anxious and worried, which is really what you grew up with as a child. I was afraid everybody was going to get in a car accident all the time. So I did not tell you about these awful things until after you grew up, I hope. But the anxiety would have been pretty obvious to everybody around me. And Dad used to make fun of me for it, and tell you kids that you know how Mom is. She just worries.
Well, you do.
She
hey,
just
why
worries.
Connor? Or is there any special reason you chose Connor as his pseudonym? It's a funny pseudonym, Connor.
Yeah, for Dad? Oh,
it's fun to think of you sitting there thinking, what's a good alternate name for?
Because he's a cute guy. He's a cute guy. And Bart is the name of like a cute guy. And so is Connor.
Well, his full name's Hobart,
I don't know.
which is not as cute. But
I know.
Yeah,
well,
I will say,
nice.
since I know he won't hear this, obvious, we see why you guys got divorced. He has his own emotional processing issues, and he would say stuff that you can't say about your part, like, oh, your mom's just crazy. She just likes to be unhappy. Likes to be unhappy? How dismissive.
Yeah, he used to say
don't
that
say
to
that
me.
if you're a partner of a person in depression.
That pissed me off.
Oh, just ignore them. They just like to be unhappy. That's not good.
Yeah.
And of course, you ended up divorced. He was not a good partner for someone with depression.
Well, your dad is gay, which I also class as not necessarily bad luck, but more like it makes sense that I would marry a gay guy because I didn't want anybody getting too close to me because I was afraid.
Well, you mentioned stuff that you didn't expose us to, which was absolutely true, although obviously we witnessed your anxiety and the effects of trauma upon you, but you didn't share a lot of this hidden history of what a rough childhood you had until it was age appropriate. But I will say, somehow something you mentioned to me, or I read, or Dad mentioned, or someone said, and I know it stuck with me because it became a core childhood memory and then appears in my novel, which I know you then read and now you're aware of this, was the idea that you mentioned in this passage of dying and being a little gray speck of energy that just desperately is lonely and can't find any connection to any kind of force or energy and is caught in this liminal space forever. And that was like, to me as a child, like my boogeyman story. It was like I would lay awake at night thinking, what if that is true? Like, what if that is the afterlife? And I want to ask, how does that feel for you? Now I have a son. This is so trippy to me where I'm like, what will I offhandedly say that will lock into his brain? So, like, how does that feel for you knowing that stuck around in my head and then I put it in my novel 40 years later?
Well, I knew fairly, in the last 10 years or whatever, that you had heard that and it came out in your book. And I was really, really upset that I had ever told you that story. But that story was what my father told me when Justin died. And I told it in the context of, I only ever tell that story in the context of trying to explain to people how fucking crazy my family was. So I didn't believe it at the time, and I have never believed it. And he told me that when I was 16, and I thought he was fucking nuts.
Yeah. Well, I've never believed that it's similar as you described that splinter of doubt, though, of like, or I guess maybe I could be possessed by evil demons, and this is what it feels like. Where it's like, I would lie awake at night thinking, there's almost certainly that's not what happens after you die, but if it is, think about that, and I would just spiral and have a panic attack. Which, again, I would like to expiate you of any guilt feeling in the sense that I was going to fix on anything. If it wasn't that, I would have thought of something else scary. But however we process that fear of
death,
it's only going to be more suffering and more trauma and more pain because we've been traumatized. How do you feel? You said you feel like the bad luck ended or evened out. Does that still feel true?
I just noticed after a certain age, when you guys were born, that these slamming traumatic shocks just kind of stopped happening. Yeah,
I mean, people
bad things
still died.
happened.
Yeah.
People still died, Hans.
Yeah. We miss Hans. Shout out.
I had a terrible fear of death growing up as a little kid. I'm pretty sure it's normal. And I used to wake up in the middle of the night scared of death, scared that I didn't have a particular concept, just scared of not existing and not being where I needed to be anymore around people that I loved, like my brothers. And so I would get up and read Peanuts comics. I would read the Peanuts books, and they would soothe me and make me feel safe and comforted.
Just because they're so bland and unfunny?
But they're just so innocent. It's
like
why I listen. That's why I watch the Andy Griffith Show now, because it's so innocent. Nobody there would ever assault you on the street just to be mean.
But what's funny is I grew up then, of course, in the same bathrooms reading just back to back those Peanuts collections.
Calvin and
But then
Hobbes.
also Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield collections. And I'll tell you, there's nothing to make Garfield seem edgy more like a Peanuts collection. You're like, this Garfield is turning the game on its head compared to Peanuts.
Did you know that Charles Schultz has my birthday?
Well, he should give it back. He's dead. I don't know why he has to keep it.
Yeah. I love Charles Schultz.
I know you do.
I love Peanuts.
Great. I'm glad I helped you through that difficult time.
I grew up without a cell phone, so I don't have a need for constant.
I grew up without a cell phone.
Frenetic stimulation.
Hey, I grew up without a cell phone. I didn't. When did I get a cell phone? Help me remember that. High school.
You had video games.
I did.
You and David got cell phones after Columbine.
But we always had.
Speaking of trauma.
Speaking of trauma, I wanted to talk a little about self-harm because I've mentioned, frankly, in the book and on this show, that when I flip all the way out, I hit myself in the head or hit my head on the wall. And you saw me doing that growing up, and then you've seen me do it when I have really bad spells as an adult, too. And, like, Jen has seen it enough that, there's been times where we're like, we don't know if this marriage is going to work out because it's so traumatic to behold. Can you speak a little bit to the having of children, one of which I've just had and is in the other room? And is that it? Is that why you feel like you don't have bad luck anymore? Is because you had me and David? Because I will say that having Sonny does feel kind of like a get out of jail free card with some stuff. Meaning like he did instantly make me not care about Hollywood a tenth as much, because a kid is a new thing you can put all your value into pretty easily. And it does heal a lot, but surely it can't just be that I'm so great that I healed all your trauma.
I mean, I really felt like these shocking things stopped happening so frequently.
But because you had kids or around the time you had kids?
Listen. You guys had that car accident,
I was going to say, we didn't even stop having car accidents.
but you didn't die.
Correct. Unless this is the afterlife, which would be pleasant.
And, possibly I just see things differently, but I do think if you tell my life story factually, there was a series of terrible luck for a long time until, I was about 30. I don't know.
Yeah.
I handle things that happen. Things happen that are upsetting and hard to go through.
That's what I get. Well, I'll just out with it.
But not quite so frequently. Oh my goodness.
The thing I want to ask, so I shall, but that I didn't know I was going to ask is that time not too long ago, I don't know if I've mentioned it in public, but that I was like, it's maybe the worst I've ever felt in retrospect about one of my episodes. In the shower at your house, hitting my head and saying that it's your fault that I feel that I have to exist and therefore experience depression. How'd that feel? Because I'm worried about now, because people, now that I've had Sonny, people have told me, wait till he tells you I don't love you anymore and how it feels. And I'm so sorry that I did an adult version of that. What did that feel like?
I already felt so bad for the fact of how much pain you're going through. This is a whole different episode, Michael, if you ever have the courage to go into it with me. Watching you like that for 8 years is the worst thing I've ever been through. Watching you in that much pain for 8 years is the worst pain I've ever been through.
Now, can we define that period? Because I feel like I was only in the medication Mambo zone for like 3 years.
You were actively suicidal for 8 years, starting when you secretly became alcoholic and couldn't quit, and we didn't know what was wrong.
Oh, sure.
Because you wouldn't tell anybody about the alcohol. And then you tried different you quit, which was not easy and also a terrible period that made you suicidal. And then the different medication trials made you worse than ever. And watching you go through that was really, really, really hard. And it would get to the point where, it broke my heart. I was exhausted. I didn't want you to be in that much pain. I knew that if you quit drinking and went on Prozac, you would be okay again. I knew that. So there was that at the end of the tunnel. I knew this was something that could be fixed, but you didn't know that. And speaking of having a child and whether that fixed everything, no. That's the worst risk you ever take. It's the best thing that could ever happen to you, but if you lost it, it would be the worst pain you ever had. It's the flip side. Do you want to be alive and love people and be close and have joy? Because if you want that, you risk. It comes with the flip side of it. It's yin yang. It comes with the pain. The depth of the pain is a reflection of how incredible the love was. Do you want that love?
I guess, but there's, as your story proves, like, there's pains that the universe just dishes out. You don't deserve, like the deaths you suffered of friends and loved ones was not the pain. I understand what you're saying. The pain you feel is the flip side of the fact that you loved that person. But I guess it's hard for me to reconcile. You're talking about specifically with your own kids. Okay.
I'm talking about
kids.
I
don't see, it's hard for me to buy the everything happens for a reason, because some stuff does seem like, of course you learn from every setback, but Precious, based on the novel Pushed by Sapphire, didn't deserve that. Or you in your life, people are experiencing a level of pain that they don't need, that is not informative, that is not instructive. A kid getting crushed under rubble in Gaza is not learning a lesson that they will later have a better life because of. There are lives that just get fucked and they die horribly, and that is true of the universe we live in. And that's hard for me to think about and reconcile, that's all.
Yeah, I don't buy everything happens for a reason in my life. I don't buy some of the ideas about you choose your family. You choose your own family before you're born for the lessons you need to learn. I don't really buy that. There's a lot of things I don't buy.
What about
and
karma?
There's a lot, I don't really buy that either. There's a lot of things I buy that would make sense to nobody but me. So,
That's what I like.
I can't
We all have
explain.
our own religion.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And I hope you come to have my religion.
Why? In like a prescriptive way?
Because it's so comforting, and
'cause it's comforting.
it's so wonderful.
Sure.
And it's I know that this is the physical plane. If anything happened to take me away,
Don't say that you're gonna.
I'll be the
Now
one
you're
who's.
gonna have a heart attack in 6 months. You're cursing.
Oh yeah,
this.
such fun, good time.
Good times.
I'll be.
Good
I'll
chat,
probably
good
be the one
callback.
who's. I'll be the one who's taken away from this plane, and
I
I
mean,
think
someday.
I am quite
Why
certain
is this
that.
turning this way? Don't go. Let
Okay,
me
fine. Okay,
say.
fine.
I want to lighten it up and ask about cutting, do you see any
Lighten it.
difference or cutting very common. Many depressed people in pain turn to self-harm. Do you understand or have any
It's
wisdom
not.
on why
First of all, it was not self-harm. I started cutting when I was 16 after Justin and Terry died. It felt good, and I did it because.
Right, alcohol felt good, but it's self-harm.
But it didn't harm. What did
Okay.
it do to harm? I didn't get an infection.
I think that's a definition
I
of
didn't show
self-harm
anybody.
behavior.
I didn't show anybody, so it didn't get me stuck in a psych hospital.
Interesting.
It just
take
was. It felt good to me.
on cutting.
No, listen.
Okay.
If you cut and cut and cut, and people think you're nuts, and it ruins your relationships, that's self-harm. But I was just trying to feel something because
I hear a
felt
lot
this-
of cutters phrase it that way.
I
It's
felt-
just that it cuts through the numbness.
I mean, there's a thick when a wound heals and scars over, the scar is thick and it's numb. So
Yeah.
that's.
I guess I'm just
kinda-
saying I don't know that that's
It's kind
the
of.
most recommended intervention
I
for
didn't.
that.
Hey, I didn't have any intervention. Nobody was.
I know.
There.
I know. Oh, I'm not trying to shame anyone who cuts.
Nobody
I
was helping me.
guess I'm just
Nobody
defending
was
semantics, which I
giving.
should stop doing.
Nobody was giving me any advice. Yeah, I was just going. It's the motivation isn't self-harming. The motivation was it felt good to me. I mean, it was comforting to me. So for you,
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is hitting myself in the head didn't feel comforting.
and
It was self-punishing.
and you could actually injure your brain further that way.
Oh, way worse.
But
than
I don't
cutting,
know.
for sure.
I don't know why that felt good to you, whereas cutting felt good to me. But somehow that felt good to you. So
No, it didn't feel good to me. That's what I'm saying is so interesting is that there are two things that I think would qualify as the symptom we call self-harm, and yet they're so different because you felt good about it and that it was comforting to feel anything, whereas when I hit myself in the head, the best thing I can ascribe it to is like if I were an abusive husband or parent, that would be me hitting my kid or wife, but because I wouldn't do that because it's too fucked up, I hit myself instead. But the urge is the same. It was not comforting. I was hitting myself in the head like I would hit someone who's disappointing me, or like I'm trying to get them to straighten up and by hitting them, which is very interesting how different the motivations were. And then alcohol was the one that to me felt comforting.
well,
like,
that's
that's
just
nice.
an addiction. Yeah.
So now that you do have kids who themselves have kids, how does that early bad luck streak feel? This is, I guess, a grim way to ask it, but I think potentially helpful to people who listen to this podcast and sometimes find themselves in deep despair. Could it really possibly be worth it? Or do you still say, like, is it worth it to stay alive? Are you glad you stayed alive to this age and had all the experiences you've had?
I am having a great time. I am happier than I've ever been. I have a very, very nice life, a wonderful life. Um, when Owen, when I started having a relationship with Owen, my first grandson, um, it was a similar rebirth as to when I had you and David. When I had you and David, I literally felt like I was reborn and I had a chance to do my life all over again with the childhood joy that I had lost, experienced through being with you guys, having it and raising you. And it was the best time of my life. And then you guys grew up and left, and I had empty nest syndrome, which I battle.
Well, and of course, Trump derangement syndrome still to this day is a
I
struggle
battle
for
it.
you.
I battle unsuccessfully, but the cats help. But then Owen was born, and I didn't expect much out of it. Everybody says grandkids are the best thing. It was amazing. Owen and I are attached, and I got to watch him become not just an infant, but a little toddler, and then speaking and playing, and it was like being reborn again. It's exactly like having kids again. It was like I got to have
Exactly
David.
like equally.
Pretty much. It's
okay,
like
so then if you had to rank your
had,
love for David, Michael, Owen, Sonny, what's the order?
of course, Michael and David are equal at the top, and then Owen and Sonny are equal, just slightly
At number
beneath
2.
Michael.
Okay. All right.
Michael and David, David and Michael, Owen and Sonny, Sonny and Owen.
Okay.
And then Sonny was born, and he looks like Jen and you put together, which is pretty magical.
Makes sense when you think about it.
Pretty magical, but I feel like he's so young still that we don't really know each other yet. But oh my God, he's so freaking cute.
Potential, sure.
You tell
let me
me.
say I want
But
to.
I didn't answer your question.
Okay.
I'm scared all the time that something will happen to your kids, and that then you will have that pain that I hope you never have.
Well, as the middleman who just had his first child, I will back you up and say yes, it's true that it feels like not a total refresh, but it feels like a very rewarding way to apply the wisdom of your own trauma, and is incredibly validating in the sense of connecting you to your ancestors. Like it makes you feel your place in that chain. But I also feel the need to say you don't have to have kids to do that. I think it's a really good one because it's built into us evolutionarily, right? But I don't want listeners to walk away thinking the only way to heal is to procreate. I'd rather they take from your wisdom what you said about just the mere fact that all this horrible shit befell you, and yet you're still glad you're here and the journey continues and it's still rewarding.
I think the joy of children is very specific to me. I happen to really
interesting.
like children. No, absolutely. You don't have to have children to get your life back again. No. And we have, I live with my husband, and we have a wonderful life. I love it. I love walking. I love rain. I love, going to the beach, the fresh air. There are many things that I get joy from now that I couldn't before because I was beaten up and, depressed, and now I'm not. And it's really, truly lovely.
And when you think of people now like Justin and Terry, how does that feel?
It feels horrible.
Still feels horrible.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Especially Terry.
I think that's honest and wise, or like, I don't know. A big part of this show, and you were my first guest and potentially my last guest because we're switching shows for a while. So I sort of want to end on like words of wisdom to the people in pain right now who happen to find this episode. So the pain won't, if I'm gathering, what I'm hearing is the pain won't go away. Your trauma is always going to be your trauma. But it's worth, and there's no one size fits all prescription, like have a kid that will make you happy. Certainly not.
No.
But
no.
The bad news is you can't just quit.
To make you happy.
You got to keep trying things and continue on your journey. And it is possible for everyone to end up in a place where they're glad that they stuck with it. I do believe that.
I believe the best is yet to come. When I put that on your cards, I really believe it. The best is
Never
yet to
stop
come.
struggling. Don't
The
let the
older I
bastards grind
get,
you down.
the older I get, the better I feel, honestly. And
So let's eat beans with every meal.
you asked me why did I write that book?
Please,
And
that's a
I
great way
didn't.
to wrap up.
I didn't answer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, there's two answers to that question.
Give them both.
I wrote that book for you and David to know who I really was. And I wrote that book for myself.
Damn, that's the exact answer I'd give to Sonny about my book. So I guess humans just basically recapitulate the same experience
Bullshit.
over and over.
The same
Yeah.
bullshit. The same fucking bullshit.
Great. Well, I'm so
No.
yeah.
If you have biochemical depression and you get it treated, you will feel so much better. You still have to work all this stuff out, life lessons continue on for the rest of your life. Just keep plugging away.
Just don't give up.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, but I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm almost 70 years old. I have health issues that do not upset me at all compared to how depression did. So
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
No,
I mean, it's hard.
You're
it's
done.
hard.
We're done.
I'm
We're out
looking,
of time.
I'm looking at this beautiful painting that Glenn
The
painted
Glen, yeah.
of
Glen
the
Craig.
green water and the boat. And there's
In Turkey.
what else?
With Dad.
What else can you add to that?
If this
Nothing.
isn't nice, what is? Yeah. Well, in
is
my
what it
life,
is.
Mom, you were the initial inspiration and model for me of resiliency in the face of trauma and navigating your way to becoming a person you want to be in spite of starting under circumstances where you have every reason to, not like to spiral out and implode, or even you do spiral out and implode for a while. Hey, I'm a recovering alcoholic sitting here, and you've been a person who did feel that that it was time to check out, for years at a time. But the basic core message of this show is in 80-point font at the beginning of my novel as well, which is you are not alone, no matter how much it feels like you are. And I hope this show helped make some people feel that way. You definitely make me feel that way, Mama.
I love you so much.
I know, but I'm really crabby at you all the time, though. Will Sonny do that to me?
You get cranky at me. I get cranky at Matt. You get cranky at the people you're comfortable with.
Okay, well, try not to
No
take that
biggie.
personally out there. Don't give
don't.
up. Everyone listening, your pain is real and deep and complex, and you have to fight through it. But you can.
And talk about it.
So anything to plug? If people are a fan of your comedy, where should they follow you on social media?